Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TREPAC View. My name is Bill Evans, and I am the 2021 TREPAC Chair. I'm excited today to be moderating an expert panel of PAC trustees who's going to be discussing all the latest TREPAC hot topics about why TREPAC is important, how we can target members, and ways to educate and increase participation among our realtor colleagues. But first, we have some special guests who are joining us today. Our friends and political consultants, Jasmine Cronflay and Dan Ball with SGS, or Strategic Guidance Systems. They're going to be giving us their view on today's political environment and discuss ways on how we can break through the noise and better engage with our colleagues and TREPAC members. So before we get started, Dan and Jasmine, please introduce yourselves and take it away.
Great. Well, thank you for the intro. We are so happy to be here. Thank you for having us. So I'm Dan Ball. I'm here with Jasmine Cronflay from SGS. SGS and Texas Realtors have been partners now for a little over 10 years. So time has really flown by. We are partners. We help with building and managing the Texas Realtors data mine, conducting survey research, conducting quantitative and qualitative analysis, political engagement, a whole slew of other things. And what I do on my side of the operation is handle everything data and analytics. So I handle our data mine, I handle your machine learning, all of the really technical nitty-gritty stuff that no one really likes to talk about except me. That's sort of my world. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy that they let me out to talk to someone out of my data cave. And I'm here with Jasmine Cronflay, who leads up our public opinion research operation, who was also incidentally a self-described Texas politics junkie, more so than anyone from the state of Florida has a right to be. I think she's the only one I know that has stayed up past midnight to live stream y'all's city council meetings. So we are really, really happy to be here. And we can't wait to talk to you about three things in particular. I had a preacher friend who used to say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So here's what we're going to tell you. First of all, we want to talk about sticking to common ground issues when it comes to TREPAC and political messaging as a whole. Two, we're going to talk about using creative messaging and, more important, really deliberate messaging to cut through what is going to be an increasingly noisy political environment. And number three, we're going to talk about leveraging data-driven targeting to achieve both of those things. And our hope today is that these serve as a framework to guide the rest of our discussions this afternoon, that we can use this sort of as a jumping off point and use it to contextualize some of the bigger strategic and tactical considerations that we're going to reflect on for the rest of the day today. So let's dive right in. And as we do, I'm going to talk about why each one of these things are so important, and not only how we can continue to do this, but how Texas Realtors have done this so far this cycle. So number one, finding the common ground. This is much, much more difficult than it sounds. As you may know, Texas Realtors are an incredibly diverse group of people. These are contributions made to FEC recipients, FEC PACs, by Texas Realtors since January 1st, 2019. And you see, when you go down this list, you don't see all red or all blue. You see that Texas Realtors are all across the spectrum in terms of political engagement, partisan preference. And that's really important because we need to keep in mind that as a nation and as a state, we are actually much more divided than we have ever been. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell whether we're just more aware of it now because it's all over Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And, you know, maybe we're just hearing more of it. We didn't normally hear our really eccentric uncle get out there with all of his political opinions, and maybe it's just perceptions. But the honest truth is we actually have good data on this. We know that since 1994, Republicans and Democrats have become more and more polarized with every passing decade. What you're looking at here is a chart across 10 different metrics of political values questions. And every decade, you see, we've become more and more bifurcated. We've become more polarized on pretty much all of these issues. There's smaller middle ground. And I expect that when we look at this in another few years, that's only going to continue. We see those political divisions across every issue you can imagine, the criminal justice system, racial equality, climate change, healthcare, unemployment, even things that you wouldn't normally consider political issues, things like healthcare, trust in news media, whether colleges are having a positive or negative impact on the country. There are so many things where we are more and more divided. And the thing to keep in mind here, I think, is that realtors are not magically immune from this polarization, right? Realtors are people too. So when we start thinking about different facets of TREPAC, when we start thinking about investments, when we think about member communication, how we engage in issues, how we motivate members to act, we want to keep in mind that we want to look at that through the lens of that increasing polarization. We're not saying don't take a stand on any of those really important issues, but we need to view the messaging and we need to view how we frame the issues through the lens of someone who's conditioned to be polarized on everything, no matter how benign it might seem. So the good news is we can approach this very methodically, right? We don't have to guess about what issues we can find common ground on. And the really good news is we've already done that by talking to voters and by talking to membership at large, and we've identified a few of those issues. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jasmine for just a couple minutes and have her talk about some of the issues we've identified and just how much common ground we can find on some of those things.
Thanks, Dan. So yeah, like Dan mentioned, when it comes to finding the issues that bring people with diverse backgrounds together, one really great way to do this is through survey research. In surveys, we can ask what we call an issue grid type of question. And an issue grid forces the individual respondent to pick one priority among a bunch to focus on, and it's kind of unfair to do, but we still make them do it, and it can shed light on what is most important to people. And TREPAC actually recently conducted an online membership survey, and I know the trustees will be diving into that a little bit later on more, but here's a little precursor to that. In the issue grid, it really stands out because of the level of contrast you have with the top issue compared to all the others. You'll see that property taxes clearly rise above the other issues. And it's one of the issues that really bring a diverse membership like Texas Realtors together. Typically in this kind of question, there isn't one that really stands out above the others like it does here. We see that property taxes are definitely one of those common ground issues among membership. This is one that not only unites a diverse membership like Texas Realtors, but also unites memberships with consumers. We find that this issue of property taxes is one that different groups of people are concerned about. Again, not just members. We conducted a statewide survey a few months ago, and we found that just like in this membership survey, voters agree that this issue is important to them. And it's noteworthy to cover this issue, like Dan mentioned, in a time when we are so divided about seemingly everything. These common ground issues definitely do exist, and research can help shed light on them and present an opportunity for action. So not only is this an issue that unites voters alike, but it's also an issue that's important to because it stays true to the Realtor mission. It's not only a common issue, but it's a core issue of TREPAC, and it's just one example that unites members, voters, is essential to the mission of the association. So in this slide, you'll see that pretty staggering numbers here. It's very rare to find that 88% of people agree on anything. And you'll see that 88% of people agree that property owners deserve to know more about their tax bill, and 92% agree that Texas Realtors should educate members on property taxes. Now, you could take my word for it that these are pretty staggering numbers, but just in case you don't, not even, for example, Bob Ross is as favorable as educating on property taxes, or the beloved Mr. Rogers. Not even the Beatles had as favorable numbers as lowering property taxes does, or even Tom Hanks. none of these measure up to the high favorability that we found in educating property owners about their tax bill. So that's a very big deal. And we also found in the research that membership was specifically asking for this kind of outreach campaign. And so now that we've identified this common ground issue, it presents an opportunity to take action and answer the call to educate and empower members and consumers alike. And this has led to the property tax outreach campaign. Texas Realtors launched this campaign, and it's one of the ways that y'all are taking this obstacle of a divided country, finding the opportunities, finding the common ground issues that are a core value, and acting on them with a campaign that is based on results and is a great service to members and consumers. To date, we've had over 15,000 visitors to the website, and we're still going. So with that, I'll let Dan speak on another core mission that TREPAC has acted on this year.
Yeah, so all of those things are important, not just for those long-term engagements, but also for when you have sort of like a black swan event, one of these things that comes up and that you could have never foreseen, which I guess in this case would be the entire year of 2020, right? Who would have thought a year ago that seeing ads of kids walking into Target wearing face masks would have been something you could even conceive of? And when all of a sudden you reach a point where there's a mission critical opportunity, and for instance, if we need to make the case that, hey, housing is essential, that real estate is essential to day-to-day life, you already have that base of support built up. You know that you can engage in those issues, and you know that you can move those in a really critical way. The second thing that I want to talk about, especially when talking about engaging in these mission critical issues, is honing the messaging, using creative messaging, and more important, using very deliberate and well-researched messaging. And here's why I bring this up, especially now. When we were in Austin for the winter business meetings this year, when we could actually all meet in person, I don't know if you can all remember those days, but we were all in the same room, believe it or not, less than 6 feet apart. We were hearing these discussions about, it sounds like Joe Biden is polling really well in Texas. And, that was kind of interesting, and it made some fun side stories. And then over the summer, we started seeing polling that was looking more like this. And as the great prophet once said, first you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. And as of yesterday, the polling averages were about Trump and Biden almost tied or within a few points in Texas. That's a trend that we've seen not just in public polls, but in that property tax benchmark Jasmine just mentioned. We've seen very close name IDs, ballot tests, including ballot tests among super voters who cast ballots in 4 of the last 4 elections. We've seen that in election forecasts, and we have seen no shortage of the repetitive story over and over again in all of the blogs and political opinion pieces. And what I want to point out here is you may or may not believe anything that I just covered here. I'm going to actually dodge the question as to whether I believe any of it has legitimacy to it at all, because the honest truth is, for your purposes, it really doesn't matter, right? Because the perception is the reality. And what happens when nationally all of this focus starts increasing on Texas more and more and more, you're going to wind up where we've been in Florida for a number of years, where national dollars are pouring into your state in amounts that have never been seen before. It's only going to continue. And your signal to noise ratio all of a sudden starts to fall because there are so many voices in the room. Again, whatever you believe about the direction of the state on a partisan basis, you can't deny that Texas is going to receive more attention than it ever has over the next decade. So because that perception equals the reality, and because there are going to be so many more voices in the room over the next decade, that means that not just your targeting, but your messaging has to be very, very carefully crafted, right? It's got to be crafted with surgical precision. You need to start thinking about economy of language and how do we convey the most important message in the fewest number of words, because everyone's attention span is going to be pulled left and right between everything else that's happening. And we do that, we break through the noise through a very deliberate process, right? We start with research, we do detailed analysis on that research, and then we use that analysis to craft messaging. So with a real life example from this year's primaries, I'm going to turn it back over to Jasmine to talk about how we did that in a race this year.
Yeah, so the example that I wanted to bring up today was in House District 60 for the election for Glenn Rogers. In the primary, Rogers actually finished in second place. And going into the runoff, we knew it would be a really competitive and close election. These are the types of campaigns TREPAC chooses to be involved in. Y'all could pick the easy ones to engage in that have, high favorability or likelihood to be successful. And it wouldn't be a very tough battle, but instead y'all choose to engage in the difficult races where there might be more of a lift and where y'all can really make the difference in the outcome of the election. So this was definitely one of those cases. And going into the runoff, we conducted and analyzed survey research to develop the best messages and ultimately produce persuasive, creative materials to make the difference and pull ahead, with Rogers trailing by 2 in the primary to winning by 2 in the runoff. And again, this perception of a competitive state with an influx of spending in the state makes it harder for your message to get out, which is why it's so crucial to have a creative message. And this was a victory in large part due to getting the right message to the right voters and breaking through that noisy environment. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Dan, to touch on how we actually get that message to the right people.
Great. So last thing I want to talk about, and this is the part where I could probably talk for a few hours about this, but to be respectful of your time, we're going to try to wrap it up here shortly, is leveraging the data that you all have invested in over the last decade or so to engage in some data-driven targeting. So, when we talk about TREPAC, we generally talk about 3 things. We talk about vote, act, and invest. And what we do on the data side is we build analytics and modeling tools to help us engage in each one of those 3 categories. So for an example, when we talk about engaging people to vote, whether that's motivating them to vote or understanding their likelihood to vote, we leverage all of the data we have in the TREPAC data mine, voter data, property records, membership information, PAC contributions, county level records, and we use all of that historical information to predict, say, turnout likelihood. We use survey research of thousands and thousands of likely voters in Texas, asking questions on a range of partisan issues and social issues to do things like predict someone's likely partisanship. So can we say that Dan Ball is more likely to vote for a Democrat or a Republican if he goes to the polls? Obviously very important when you're trying to hone in on who to persuade in a really tight election. When we talk about investing, we look at past investor trends so we can understand what makes a member likely to invest in TREPAC and who might need a little bit more of a nudge. And the purpose behind all of these modelings, and everything nowadays you hear is AI and machine learning, the purpose, the reason this is helpful is it lets us remove all of those parts of the audience that we already know are decided one way or another. So we don't spend a lot of money turning out super voters. We don't spend money trying to convince hardcore partisans one way or another. We very deliberately and very tactically go in and target only those that we're likely to actually convince to either vote, act, or invest. And the good news is all of this is at your disposal, whether you know all of these little details in and out or not. The goal is just to get everyone to say, can we do better than guessing at this? Can we customize our targeted lists? Can we look at any machine learning models that Texas Realtors have invested in? Can we look at district performance or mapping or visualization? I want to close with just one more statistic that I updated as of this morning. I don't know if you've been following this, but it turns out about 40% of all voters in the state have already voted early. That is an astounding number. About 7.4 million Texas voters, which is about 82% of the total turnout in 2016, has already voted early, 86% of the 2016 turnout. If you do the math, there are 4 days of early voting left. And in most surveys, you see that about 30% of people say they're likely to vote on election day, which means that we could see 10 to 11 million votes cast in this election, up from 8.6 million in 2016. That's absolutely enormous. Now, you would think that given this high turnout across the board, we've pretty much hit our ceiling, but I have good news for you. This is what turnout has looked like among Texas realtors as of this morning. So far as of yesterday, of all matched members in the state, 63% of all matched members have already voted early, which means if you talk to a random member from anywhere across the state, they are 2 to 1 more likely to have already voted in this upcoming election. That is just huge. That is incredible. And it's something that we want to make sure that we help continue to invest in as a culture in the years to come. We've seen that not only in members, but obviously when we do things like look at how our targets have performed in the past. We saw in the primaries that our targets voted at rates 2 to 3 times higher than voters as a whole. So because of all of this data infrastructure and the data mine that you've invested in, we are able to see outcomes like this. We're able to continue to build a culture of voting, acting, and investing. So to conclude, and this is how we want to sort of frame up the rest of the conversation, is our recommendations are: 1, really think about those common ground issues. Everyone has those pet issues that they are absolutely in love with, that take up all of our mind share, and it's what we go home and talk with our friends and family members about, but we really, really want to stick to those core mission-driven issues. Number 2, use creative messaging and very deliberate, well-researched messaging to cut through that noisy environment. It's only going to get louder from here on out, no matter what happens in a week from now. We haven't seen the last of it. And number 3, to leverage data-driven targeting anywhere you can. And again, anywhere you can ask yourself, can we do better than guessing on this issue? And let's put our minds together and see how we can do that. So that's all we've got. I don't know if we have any questions or we want to turn it back over from here, but I'm happy to answer any if you have any.
I don't believe there are any questions, but I have a couple of anecdotal things I want to tell you guys. First of all, thank you, Jasmine and Dan. And Jasmine, I want to mention to you that when I'm a Central Texas guy, okay? When Mayor Adler first came into office, he said, nothing good happens at City Hall after midnight. So I just want to share that with you. And I have been at City Hall until 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning in the past. And Dan, I'm a Central Texas guy. So 2 Central Texas counties, as of yesterday, have already had more votes cast than all the votes they got in 2016 election. So we're getting out the vote in Texas. So is there any questions? Anybody got? Okay.
If there are, have them go through the website.
Okay. So thank you again. We really appreciate your insight into today's political environment. And I know that it's changing sometimes by the minute. And it's important for us to stay focused and stay on message. And we're all going to do our very best to tell a story when we go to see our legislators and try to break through the noise. So thank you guys for being here. Okay. We are ready to go to the view and our trustee panel. I'm waiting on my slides. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. We're going to cover a lot of ground right now. I'm not seeing the same things. Okay, I've got it right here. So we're going to go through a lot of information between now and 3 o'clock. I want to introduce you to who our trustee panelists are today. We have Diane Kennedy from Austin. Wave, Diane. We have Marquise Williams from San Antonio. We have Leona Grubbs from Amarillo. And off camera, we have Leslie Cantu. She's here just to make sure we all stay honest, okay? So we're going to jump right into it. So we are here today and we're going to be connecting the dots, okay? Logical, methodical, connecting the dots from TREPAC to you. And a great place to get started is how we tie everything together and what we do as TREPAC. How we actually connect the dots is going to be explained to you during the next several minutes. TREPAC is directly connected to everything we do as Texas Realtors and our ability to be successful. And we know we do a great job in Texas at TREPAC. So the number one, the first dot that we see on this slide is educate, and everything starts with education. So number one, educate. Texas Realtors need to know about issues affecting private property rights and the real estate profession. So let's talk about the TREPAC mission statement for just a second. The TREPAC mission statement is to raise and disperse funds to promote home ownership, protect real property rights, and increase political awareness. So that is our mission. So Marquise, can you tell us why the mission of TREPAC is so important for realtors to know?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me. And I just want to mention that it's important that Texas Realtors know why we exist. What is our purpose and what is our mission? Oftentimes, many people believe that all realtors care about is commissions. I mean, it's true. We do care about making money, and we do care about making a living in the profession that we love. But it also speaks to much more than that. It's about protecting you as realtors, you and your clients, as property owners, and the overall economy in the great state of Texas. You see, it's about much more than raising money and making money.
So we asked our members, SGS, Dan and Jasmine talked about surveys. And so we did some surveys as well. And we asked our members to tell us what was the most important issue facing the real estate industry. And I like to say the real estate profession. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to correct that. And what Texas Realtors should focus on for the rest of 2020. And of course, you saw with SGS that property taxes, without question, was the most important issue. Then affordable housing, HOAs, and federal tax reform were some of the other responses. But what's interesting is a decent percentage of our respondents were unsure. So I'm going to ask Diane, what do you think our members know that Texas Realtors were instrumental in passing huge property tax reform legislation back in 2019?
I think that they do know there is a link between what Texas Realtors was working on and the fact that we did get that tax reform. But I don't think they understand, or maybe I should say they take for granted the process. They do not see the links, if you will. So I think we need to do a much better job of telling the backstory, telling them what went into getting those tax reforms actually done. And that's, you know, it all gets back to education, as we all know. But I think they know there's a link. They just don't know what it is.
All right. And Leona, what about you?
Well, you know, Bill, property taxes in Texas have been increasing dramatically over the past few decades. And part of that increase, we know, is due to both new properties added to the appraisal roll and the higher property valuations. So Texas Realtors, along with TREPAC, supported legislation ensuring more transparent and honest conversations with the local level. And again, really, it's about educating our members.
So it comes down to education, right? All about education. And we need to know how we're going to get this message out to our colleagues. So another question we asked Texas Realtors if they knew what their investments were used for, and overwhelmingly 74% of our colleagues said yes, they know what TREPAC investments are used for. And then we asked if you knew how TREPAC investments were utilized, would you be more or less likely to invest in TREPAC? So 68% said they would be more likely to invest in TREPAC if they just knew how their investments were utilized. So Marquise, this is telling something to us because statewide, 40% of our colleagues invested in TREPAC this year, 2020 fiscal year. So what do you think we need to do to further educate our members on why it is so important for them to invest in their profession and invest in TREPAC?
Well, I want to start off saying that this is definitely one of our biggest challenges. There's no reason why every Texas realtor isn't investing in in their business. Some realtors are not aware of exactly what we do to protect their pocket and their business. So we have something called it calculates exactly what goes into all the hard work that TREPAC does over the years to make sure that you save money. And some of the hard work can be seen at the calculate your savings. And there's a link to it on TexasRealEstate.com as well as TREPAC.com. And if you look at the link, it covers a few things. Your constitutional ban on transfer tax, mixed-use vehicle tax, professional fees, tax on service, and then it totals up the annual savings that we've done to ensure those legislative policies are enacted. So, as mentioned before, it's all about education and understanding that getting involved really does affect your pocketbook.
Thanks, Marquise. And we're going to talk about that savings calculator a little bit more in just a few minutes. But right now, you know, TREPAC does have a history of success. Sometimes I make the comment that we are victims of our own success. And so, Diane, as we talk about education, the 87th legislative session is coming up pretty soon. And as always, we have a lot at stake each and every time they meet. How do you promote our legislative successes to Texas realtors and help them connect the dots to TREPAC?
So I think we certainly need to use and promote our legislative landmark achievements over the past 50 years so that our members can see that we have a long history of success. We tend to always try to roll into the next year very quickly, get those issues out there, but we need to keep reminding them of past successes. And this little, the brochure, the slide you have there of the brochure that shows those past successes is great to use as a handout to for people to have as kind of a quick resource, if you will. But every time we get a chance to talk about TREPAC, we're also talking legislative issues. The two go hand in hand. We cannot talk about TREPAC without talking about legislative wins because of our strong PAC and the advocacy efforts. And I also think that those wins have to be put into a form that people understand that the more wins we have, the more transactions they will have in their pipeline, the more money we save our customers, the more transactions there will be because customers will reach a point if they're taxed out of a sale, they'll decide not to sell. We lose that deal. So those are the kinds of messages I think we need to get out there.
Thanks, Diane. Leona, what about you?
Well, you know, I think it's really important that we point out the work that we've done legislatively on the property tax reform in 2019, and property taxes was the #1 issue on the survey. So we still have a lot of work to be done, but you can see how instrumental Texas realtors have been with this whole process when you look at the history of all our legislative wins.
So if you hang out with Diane Kennedy very much, she always says that TREPAC is our business insurance. And think about that. You have car insurance, you have home insurance, you have all this insurance, but TREPAC, in Diane's word, is our business insurance. So On this slide, we have a great tool that actually helps our members see how much they've actually saved as a result of landmark legislation or legislative successes we've had. So Marquise, can you tell me or tell us how your association uses this savings calculator?
Yes, sir. So the way the saving calculator is used in SABOR, and I'm sure other associations, is that it highlights our legislative success. It is a great interactive way to educate and inform our members on how TREPAC saves the money every year. This helps them put a real dollar amount on why it's important to invest. One other thing is that it's very important to get to know your GAD, because your GAD will know the TREPAC calculator and how it saves you money. And for those who are new to the TREPAC, the GAD is your Government Affairs Director. So be sure to talk to them and get that information, because if you can get that information from them, they can create a talking point to share that with your fellow members. You can also see where to find your calculator on our website, and I mentioned it before at the texasrealestate.com and on trepac.com. You can even print it out and have them available for your next event and as well as your meetings.
Very good. Leona, what about you?
Yeah, you know, Bill, we use that TREPAC calculator all the time at new member orientation, our major investor events, when we visit different brokerages, and definitely when we do our TREPAC updates at our monthly luncheons.
Good. Diane, do you have anything to add about how you use this with our ABOR members?
So it's difficult for us to get enough time at our new member orientations, and those guys are pretty much overwhelmed to begin with.
Right.
So I like to use it more with when we're at events that maybe we have more agents that have been in the business a little bit longer. And sometimes we don't have time to go through it. I just hand it to them and tell them,
Right.
please, please, please go home and play with this.
So over the years, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to say it's not hard. You know, tell them that if their kids can learn math on Zoom, we feel like they can do this.
Okay. So this is just one of the tools we have available to us from Texas Realtors that help get the message of TREPAC out to all of our colleagues. And once they see how much TREPAC has done for them, it's an easy thing for them to invest in. So on the next slide, you can see that we ask members why they did not invest. Let's explore some of these different strategies to use when talking to people, because you always have to have a response. You know, not everybody is 100% behind everything. We always have to have a good response, kind of like sometimes we call it our elevator speech. So when we look at this slide, we can see that 25% said they cannot afford to invest in TREPAC. So Leona, what do you think would be a good way to communicate to someone who says that they can't afford to invest in TREPAC, especially during this time that we're experiencing right now with the pandemic?
Yeah, you know, I like to tell them that you can't afford not to invest. You know, a simple $35 or $45 investment is the cost of doing business in good times and in bad. Yeah, just look at the fact that Texas Realtors were deemed an essential service during COVID-19, and we were able to continue working while other businesses were shut down, and so many of them are still shut down. And, you know, that's no accident, because we have TREPAC to thank for that.
Yeah, we do. So Marquise, let me ask you a question. What do you say to someone who says they just don't want to invest? I know people tell you that sometimes, but tell us what you say when somebody says that.
Well, it's important for us to just talk to them and just trying to get an understanding of where they're coming from. You're not always going to get a yes from someone, but you never know unless you ask. We're all in real estate for a reason. We like to communicate. We like to go out and meet people. Well, also go out and meet your members. Talk to your fellow realtors and ask them, why aren't you investing? If someone say they don't want to, that's okay. But they may be more receptive if they know how their investments protect the business.
So, yep, and we don't always get positive comments. We sometimes get negative comments. And when, you know, we're realtors, we talk to people and we let buyers and sellers know things. And whenever I have a buyer or seller client that makes an objection to something, in my opinion, that is just them saying to me, I need more information. I'm not sure, but so we get objections about TREPAC too. So some of the objections we get are, I don't always approve of the candidates that TREPAC supports. I'm going to read a few of these, then I'm going to open it up for some discussion. I do not agree with the small-minded political activities. Realtors have too many dues already. I don't support your cause. I don't know enough about it to invest. So these are some of the comments. So tell me how you guys could react to some of these comments, please.
Well, I do want to say that you got to keep in mind that when we're supporting candidates, it's not about the candidates. It's never about the candidates. It's about their response and how they will protect our business and our profession. That's the most important thing. We're an issue-oriented party. We're all about the real estate. We're all about property rights, home ownership. That's what's important to us, regardless if they have an R or a D next to their name. Is what can you do to make sure that my profession is well protected and property rights and home ownership is well protected.
Good. Diane, Leona?
So
Okay.
I think, go ahead.
Go ahead, Diane.
Okay. So I think that when, just like you said, Bill, when they say they don't believe in the things that TREPAC is for, try to find out what exactly they might be talking about, because
Right.
I think a lot of times they don't even know what they're not for because they don't really know exactly what we're doing. So, and not to put them on the spot, but just to try to get them to open up a little bit about what turned them off in the first place.
Sure. And many times they're not going to be able to give us a good answer why they have this opinion. And we have to be ready for that too.
And we can give them examples of the wins, and hopefully that will sway them.
Leona, what about you?
Yeah, just continuing off what Diane just said, I like to point out the things that have helped all of our members, like that constitutional ban on the transfer taxes. That one's huge. And, you know, when they object to the fees that they're paying, those fees are to conduct their business and enjoy the benefits, which is totally different than that small $35 investment in TREPAC.
So I think one of the things we can also stress is that we are the realtor party. We're not a red party. We're not a blue party. We are a purple party. We need to know what the issues are. And we, you know, we're the realtor party. We're not advocates for anything in particular. So I want to go on to the next set. This slide shows that about 80% of all Texas realtors practice real estate full-time, and about 57% have been in the business more than 10 years. Diane, knowing this, how do we relay the TREPAC message to members who have been in business for a while, 10 or more years, versus those who are brand new?
So as I said before, the ones that are brand new are pretty overwhelmed when we put them through our orientation process. But one thing that we did start doing with them, and hopefully we will get back to soon, was doing a new member mixer. That was a follow-up to orientation that only new members in the last quarter were invited to, that they knew that they would be in a room with other brand new members. And it gave us a second chance to reinforce the TREPAC message. So pray we get back to those soon. And with the older members, I think that's our opportunity to start doing more targeted messaging. And we have not been doing enough of that, in my opinion. And I think that we need to start using the analytics that we have in our own association and start pulling the members that have been members for 10 years or whatever, because we know that if they've made it 10 years, they're over the hump. And they've just forgotten. They've forgotten what we told them from the beginning, so we need to go back and reinforce it and just open the conversation all over again with those guys. So I think it's targeted messaging.
So we have to get the message out. You know, it's like PBS, vote early, vote often, or speak early, speak often. So Marquise, what about those people in SABOR that are part-time realtors? How do we engage them?
Well, part-time realtors are a little bit difficult because they're not there all the time and they have other obligations. But here's the thing about part-time realtors. There's a reason why they got into real estate, and that's due to either someone, encouraging them that's already a realtor, or maybe they've heard from a broker. And those are your avenue to talk to part-time realtors, to get them, get a alumni, a trustee alumni, maybe get their broker, or maybe get their best friend to talk to them who happens to be a realtor, to showcase how important it is for them to invest in TREPAC. Another opportunity to talk to part-time realtors or to engage part-time realtors is to explain to them, okay, you might sell real estate part-time, but most likely or not, you own property, you're a homeowner, or you may know someone who's a homeowner, and then you discuss, you share with them why it's important that TREPAC will protect homeownership rights and property rights. Everything can be connected to their emotion, their willing and motivation to invest if you just sit them down and talk to them and explain to them why it's important for them to get involved.
Thanks, Marquise. So far, we've talked about education, we've talked about investing. Now we're going to talk about the election sides of what we do. And that's going to be the third, fourth, and fifth dot that we're going to connect. We're going to talk about interviewing, dispersing, and voting. So Diane or Marquis, can you take us through the process for TREPAC support of candidates or elected officials?
Diane, do you want this one or?
You go ahead and then I'll tell you what we do at ABOR, because we may
sounds good. So we have the best process in place when it comes to selecting our supported candidate. It all starts at the local level. And at SABOR, what we do, and we have a great GAD, again, Government Affairs Director, and Brett Finley. He will give us the detail, the 411 on what these candidates are all about, what they support, and their policy, their platform. Then we go through an interview section where we just interview the candidates, and whether or not we agree, we will support the candidates. And then if we do support the candidates, we send that up to the board of directors, which they will approve if they feel that those candidates best support our causes as realtors. And then that goes back to the trustees. And the PAC trustee will vote the local board recommendation of support at a 2/3 vote. And I'm sorry, and it takes a 2/3 votes for the PAC trustee to override what your local board recommends. So this is why it's so important to get involved at the local level, because your consideration for a candidate is so important that it takes more than 2/3 votes for us to overrule or override you. All politics is local.
Okay, Diane.
Mm-hmm. So taking it one step further above the local level, when we are reviewing candidates on the state level, staff is bringing us these candidates and recommendations and doing the research that we need to be able to make good decisions. But at the same time, they're relying heavily on us and what we know about that candidate on a local level to weigh in on whether there are issues or anything surrounding that candidate that has not maybe come to their attention yet or whatever. So it's definitely a teamwork process. And the candidates are not selected by one group of people, sitting around and
Right.
just having drinks. It's definitely a process of research and collaboration.
Thanks, Diane. So I want to mention right now that we've had some really great comments. We've had some really great discussions right now, but we're going to have to skip ahead a little bit. So I need my panelists to pay attention. So we're going to go straight to I voted, and TREPAC is why we exist. If you need to find out about who your association is advocating or supporting, you can go to TexasRealtorsSupport.com. And I would ask Leona to discuss the importance of the Realtor Party. I started mentioning that a few minutes ago. So Leona, can you tell us about the Realtor Party?
Yeah, definitely. So we call ourselves the Realtor Party. We do not lean towards the right or the left. We're not liberal or conservative. We're not red or blue. We're the Realtor Party. So we call ourselves the Purple Party. And I've got a pin somewhere of my purple state of Texas. Do you see that? Anyhow.
Yep.
So TREPAC definitely supports candidates who understand the importance of a strong real estate market to our Texas economy. And all the candidates, they're vetted by the realtor leaders, and they are ensuring that each one is a realtor champion. So we feel like the champions, we call them champions because they support the issues that are important to all realtors and private property owners in the state of Texas. And again, you can go to TexasRealtorsSupport.com to see who our supported candidates are.
Thanks, Leona. And that's a great way to get into our next survey question that asked members about their level of involvement. And as you can see, only 8% of the respondents were involved, and 24% said they were somewhat involved. So Diane, how do you think we need to try and continue to connect and reach the majority of our Texas realtors about TREPAC who aren't involved?
So I think it gets back to messaging. And I look at messaging much the same way as I look at advertising. I think you have to be very diverse in how you attempt to get your message out. Everybody responds differently. Some are going to respond to email, some to Facebook, some to Twitter, some to events. So at ABOR, we've tried to get much more diverse in our events and get different groups, millennials, old people, young people, whatever, involved in different ways. Yeah, we're looking for an old person event, Bill.
I see that.
So yeah, we're working on that one because there are a lot of us. But so trying to be diverse in the messaging, but I think we also have to put it out there quite a bit, and that's something else that we work on at ABOR because our communications staff is limited.
So Diane, let me just ask you, you've got a birthday coming up, right? You, me, and Kathy, so we'll talk about that at another time. So moving on, we are now at dot number 6, and dot number 6 is elect TREPAC supported candidates. We need to make sure that they are elected to office. We've gone through the local board candidate interview process. We've talked about realtor champions. Realtor champions are those officials that support the issues that we think are important. So now we are where we are today. We are during the election process right now of the 87th legislative session. On this survey question, we asked if the Texas real estate market had been better or worse for them this year. 71% of our respondents, either their business stayed the same or it had gotten better. And this is during the COVID-19 pandemic. So Thanks to TREPAC and RPAC and all of our advocacy efforts, we were named essential services. Leona, on this slide, the next slide, you can see here 76% of our members said they would be more likely to invest if they found out that TREPAC saved them hundreds or thousands of dollars. So can you tell me how your association is reaching out to your members and letting them know about the legislative successes we've had because of TREPAC?
Yeah, Bill. First of all, like we said before, that TREPAC calculator, it's an amazing tool that we can use to educate our members. So at Amarillo Association of Realtors, we have monthly luncheons, and during that we like to have a TREPAC minute or larger TREPAC presentations, depending on what's going on. And also we make these super fun and informative videos that we email to all our members. And we've gotten great response on those, and they're a lot of fun. And I always do a new member presentation for TREPAC at our new member orientation.
So Diane, the second survey question here talks about 70% said they would invest more if they knew Texas Realtors worked with elected officials to ensure that real estate was named an essential service in Texas, and we know it was. So the issue is, if anybody did any business from between March and June, that's because of TREPAC and RPAC. So Diane, what did the Austin Board of Realtors do to make sure members knew about the role that TREPAC had in that?
So Austin had an additional challenge of needing to work with our city because our city leadership is not always in step with state. So I think our membership knew what was happening on the state level, but the fact that we had staff who was able to get our city on board was also a very big win for us. And I think they did a good job of letting our membership know that it was a two-part, that it was a teamwork effort. The fact I spend a lot of time at my brokerage talking about it. As a matter of fact, I spend so much time, they're sick to death of me, but that's okay. They can't get rid of me. So I have hammered it into them, and I've talked to as many other people as I can. So everybody is sick of me sick of me saying the word essential. But the other thing I've noticed is it was highly politicized when it first came out. I had to change my messaging, if you will, and make sure that members knew that it was only if they felt safe and that it was an option for them, that it was not something that everybody was being forced to do, because it was amazing how many people felt that we should have not been named essential. So, it's about structuring your message. It gets back to that. So I found that I quickly had to change my message to the safety and the option parts of it. Right. But I think they knew that the state was definitely leading the charge.
Right. So one thing I always like to share, Diane, is the preamble to the NAR Code of Ethics says that realtors will remain aware of issues that affect their profession and that they will share their knowledge with others. And so that fits perfectly with TREPAC, because we can share our knowledge with our colleagues, and we can share our knowledge with members of the public and our buyers and sellers and clients. So we've come full circle. We've educated, we've interviewed, we've put our support behind realtor champions. The seventh dot in this circle is protect. Texas Realtors educate office holders on real estate related issues to ensure they support the passage of pro-real estate public policies. So we are at an end of this panel. We appreciate all of you for attending. I want to thank my panel participants, Leona, Diane, and Marquise, and my ghost person over here, Leslie. There's a couple other people here, but you don't care. So going forward, here's what you need to remember. We are one in 2021, and I appreciate you all being with us today, and let us know if you have any questions. We're always open. We're always happy to help, and we'll always answer questions for you. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you guys so much again.
Good job, everybody. Good. You guys were amazing.